you want, what you want.
Marry me, weirdos!
Hello, everybody.
I'm Gory B Movie.
And I'm Kayla.
And this is Buddy Book Club. No, it's Bloody Book Club.
It's a buddy book club, too.
It is.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you, Brandon, who is one of the channel members here. He just enjoyed making some creepy cocktails with us. And he just gifted somebody a membership. So that's amazing.
That is very kind.
Awesome. So if you're a member of this channel, we do movie watch parties. You get streams just for members where we just get a little crazier and do some things that I just don't make videos of because they're just too ridiculous.
Yeah.
So it's pretty fun.
It's
being
pretty
part
fun.
of the B Movie Coven.
Yeah, it is.
Alrighty, so this month's book.
This month's book was the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix.
And I am a big Grady Hendrix fan.
Yes.
What I love about Grady Hendrix is he does like this full meal deal. Like if you like movies like Shaun of the Dead, where you've got your horror, you've got your comedy, you've got your romance, it's got heart, then you're a Grady Hendrix fan. That's what he does with all of his books. This book was a little different though. It didn't quite have the humor, but it does have a lot of heart. And I do think this book has a lot to say.
Yeah.
We also have something special for you guys. During our cocktail hour, we came up with a very special Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires drink.
Yes.
Tell them what's in it, Kayla.
So we called it the Patricia Campbell after the main character of this book. And within it is 2 ounces of Southern Comfort, a splash of peach schnapps, about 4 ounces of a lemon lime soda, Sprite, 7-Up, whatever your choice is.
We prefer Sprite.
We prefer Sprite. It's got a crisper flavor. And then about an ounce or 2 of sour on top, as well as 5 maraschino cherries, because you need 1 for each member of the book club. And in this book, we have Kitty, Slick, Mary Ellen, Grace, and Patricia. So 5 book club members, 5 maraschino cherries.
Nice to see Robin in the chat. Thank you. This is my Vincent the Vampire Slayer shirt. It's pretty rad. I think I got this for Christmas. It was awesome. We also got Fairpoint Station here in the chat today. We got Denisha. We got Brandon the Beldam. Also, Denisha, welcome to the B Movie Coven. We got the Time Capsule here. And Horror Addicts, which, by the way, Horror Addicts, it's our, big thing every year. We do the Oscars, which is the Horror Movie Awards, which includes Best Horror Book of the Year, presented by
us.
Hers and My's Truly.
Yep.
So that'll be fun.
That will be fun.
Dun, dun, dun.
So, what do we want to say?
Well, let's start with a kind of spoiler-free synopsis.
Okay. Spoiler-free synopsis. This movie takes place in, it's the Scares!
Scares, sorry, my bad.
Where it takes, it's like Alabama or South Carolina?
Georgia. It's the east south.
Yeah. Somewhere down there.
But don't quote me on direct. It's in the south.
It's in the south.
Obviously, guys.
I'm sure that they say it at some point, but
they do. I want to say Georgia.
I don't know.
But I don't quote me.
There's swamp rats wherever they are. So.
Marsh rats is what they are.
Marsh rats, that's what they're called, yes. So it takes place in it starts in the early 90s, like
1993.
1993. And it's all these Southern women, but they're not middle-aged. Maybe in the 90s they were considered middle-aged, but they're probably in their late 20s, early 30s when the book starts.
They're in their early 30s,
Yeah.
except for Slick, who's younger.
Yeah.
She's in like her 20s.
But they're all...
And then I think Kitty's a little bit older. She might be like late 30s, early 40s.
Not middle-aged. We're not middle-aged.
No.
I'm
aging like fine wine.
Exactly. They're in the prime of their lives. So they're a book club, but they're not a book club. They're women who hang out, and their husbands are friends too. And they read...
Oh, it's Charleston, South Carolina.
Thank you.
That's where Darcy the Mail Girl's from. Well, not Charleston, but South Carolina.
South Carolina. Okay. Thank you, Brandon. They are part of a book club, but it's not a book club. It's an unofficial book club, and they mostly read true crime books. Like,
yeah, how it starts is they're part of some hoity-toity book club, and basically Patricia's really nervous because she's the one who has to speak on this book, and they're trying to read the great literature things, and it kind of points out that like a lot of people don't read that stuff. You know, it's cool if you do, but especially if you're a mom, you may not have time. And none of the other ladies in the book club read it, and so then they're like, let's start our own book club, or not a book club, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And they just like read what, you know, Patricia considers to be trash. It's like true crime, but they love it.
Yeah. So they read like Helter Skelter and The Stranger Beside Me, and other books along that line. They read a couple like fiction books too.
They do. Like, I love how one of my favorite parts in this book is they try to make everyone happy, and Slick is more into like romances, so they read Bridges in Madison County.
Yeah, that's right.
And then the whole group is like, he's a serial killer.
Yep.
Like, no one knows where he came from. He's a stray, and then you're like, kind of is.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember when I started to read The Stranger Beside Me, and I had to quit. It was so terrifying. Like, and these ladies, that's what all they do is they devour these true crime stories. And then
my favorite quote in this, and so like this book does, I will say, one of the complaints I read on Goodreads is a lot of people are like, this takes a really long time to get going. And it really wants to establish this friendship between the women. It wants to establish their different relationships with each other. Their different relationships with their husbands are also important because these are housewives. They do not have jobs outside of their homes.
That's a big point.
They want to establish who their children are, their relationships with them, before we get into what would be the inciting incident when something comes to mess up that. But before it gets going, I really loved this quote here really at the beginning. It says, sometimes she craved a little danger, and that is why she had book club.
Yep.
I love that.
Yep, that's what book club's for. And this book that we read this month was Dangerous.
Dangerous. So,
yes.
a man, and he's named after a character that appears in a lot of Shirley Jackson novels. His name's James. I can't remember his last name. Harris. James Harris comes to town, and he is so, like, non-threatening.
Well, he's living in a van.
That sounds threatening.
He's living in a van outside of his aunt's house. His aunt...
Well, he's living in the house, but his van shows up and they don't recognize it.
That's
so
true.
These women are they're so invested in their small community. They know if there's a car they don't recognize, they write down the license plate.
Yeah.
So they notice a strange white van with tinted windows is parked outside of Patricia's neighbor, who is an elderly woman.
And she's kind of, I think, a difficult woman. Like, she's
not friendly.
She's not very friendly.
She gets upset about their dog in the trash.
Yeah,
she's just kind of a nag.
She's kind of a nag. Their dog's name is Ragtag. And I want to say he's like a terrier of some kind.
Don't remember.
I don't know, but he's great. So Patricia one night goes out to bring the garbage cans in, and this neighbor attacks her. She's like on her and bites off part of her ear. And then, she gets away. I don't remember exactly what happened.
Like,
it's pretty scary though.
Scratches her up pretty good, and and then it's Kitty's also, like, Grady Hendrix says he based this, not Kitty, Patricia, he based Patricia on his own mother. So Patricia is permanently disfigured.
Yes.
She's lost most of her ear. Her face is all scratched up, and then once she gets better, she's worried for her neighbor who passes away. And then she knows that her nephew is there taking care of him. So she goes over there to basically like offer her condolences, her sympathies, for his aunt passing away.
Because after the aunt attacks Patricia, she's taken to the hospital and she passes away. She was like really sick. We don't really know everything, but we know she was sick enough, obviously, to attack this woman.
Patricia got to bring casserole over. That's what you do. You bring casserole over.
And she's, it's not without ulterior motives, right? Like she's got to figure out.
She also wants to know who this guy is. Like they're all in book club, like gossiping about who's this stranger. Like what's his story? Why is he, not visited anyone? Why hasn't he made himself known yet?
Yep.
But he seems perfectly normal, except for the fact that he's really gaunt and skinny. And when she goes there, he's sleeping in the middle of the day, and he really doesn't seem to want her there.
Well, she thinks he's dead.
Yeah.
And she's a retired nurse. So she tries to give him CPR, but then he, like, wakes up and loses his mind, and she, like, rushes out. But they, like, make it work, don't they? And she says,
so eventually he kind of pulls her in, and he has all these excuses. He needs to open a bank account with this bag of cash that his aunt supposedly had stashed away, but he doesn't want to draw a lot of attention, so she agrees to co-sign for him. He also doesn't have any ID, which is weird, because he said he left it where he came from. So she helps him with all this stuff, and then she's like, that is kind of weird. But she initially doesn't see the red flags because nobody in her house treats her with any respect. She has a teenage daughter who's too cool for her. Her son Blue is really obsessed with reading books about Nazis, and her husband shows her zero respect. That is his housewife.
Yeah. He's a psychiatrist, and all he's concerned with is he's trying to get this like lead position at his clinic, and that's all he cares about. He's putting in all these extra hours. Meanwhile, Patricia's at home caring for their house, their children, and his mother lives in their like mother-in-law suite,
and she's a lot, because she's dealing with some dementia. So like during dinner she'll just start throwing up on the table, or she'll come out stark naked. She'll start screaming, she'll get violent. She's a lot, and no one is helping Patricia. And that's where you really start to love these ladies in this book club, because Kitty, who has a lot of money, is like, wait, she tries to tell Kitty, and she thinks Kitty doesn't care. And then the next day she gets a professional hospital bed. Kitty has hired her a woman, Mrs. Green, to help out. She's done all these things so that Kitty's life is a little bit easier, because she needed help.
Sometimes these ladies, they really do. They're like, okay, what do you need? All right, we'll handle it.
She didn't even ask her. She just did it.
We'll pick up your kids. We'll bring you food. We'll do whatever it is we need to do. Like, they're housewives, and they're tight knit, and they really help each other.
They all have very different personalities. Kitty is very loud, brash. She's the one who started the book club and is into true crime. And she kind of tells it as it is. She has a pretty good relationship with her husband and, her children and stuff. Their issue is they have this really big house, and they do have a lot of money, but it's just a disaster there. It's, they're dealing with a lot of stuff in their home. Grace's husband Grace is very, very uptight, and she is the one who will be picky about, like, if the house is clean and stuff, and she like stares at them when they're eating chips, like not to get any crumbs in the floor.
She tells Patricia at one point that she needs to just go home and wash her curtains.
And
it'll make her feel better.
So you find out she's so invested in this because her husband is physically abusive to her when she steps out of line. Then you got Slick, whose husband is also very overbearing. They're not physically so, but she's the younger one, and she's a little, softer, a little sweeter,
Slick's
a little more naive.
Name is Horse. And like her...
Kitty's husband's name's Horse.
Oh, okay. That's right. I get them all confused. There's a lot of animals. There's a pony. There's...
her son's pony.
Yeah. But yeah, and then Mary Ellen is a little more... I don't know a lot about Mary Ellen.
Mary Ellen's husband is a cop, and that's kind of what she contributes to this. Is she also has a good they don't all have terrible husbands. Some of the reviews I read for this were saying that it was a very man-hating. That's not true. There are some pretty awful men in this book. Not all the men are. You know, Horse is great. He's very
Yeah.
supportive and sweet.
Mm-hmm.
And Ed is a cop,
Mm-hmm.
and he essentially had a really traumatic thing happen when
Mm-hmm.
he was working as a police officer, and so now he doesn't do that. And so she has this, you know, they have this connection to, you know, the police force and
Yeah.
stuff, which they try not to like abuse because, you know, their family's still like dealing with stuff and
Yeah.
him like finding a new position and all that.
Yeah. So yeah, so they all get together, they help her find Mrs. Green to help take care of her mother-in-law. And they develops more of a close relationship with James Harris. She invites him over for dessert. He hangs out with the family. He's like always coming over when it's time for dessert.
Well, and Patricia is really likes him and
Mm-hmm.
gravitates to him and doesn't see a lot of red flags initially because he treats her with respect.
Yeah, he pays attention.
Treats her like an equal. Her husband treats her like his little wife.
Mm-hmm.
She cannot have intellectual conversations about books and stuff with her husband. He just does not have the time for her. Whereas James, like, you know, will talk to her about books and history and
Mm-hmm.
stuff. He also is able to talk to their children. And on
Yes.
top of that, when the children are disrespectful to her,
Yeah.
James will stick up for her.
Mm-hmm.
So you can see instantly why she's really enamored with this
Yeah.
stranger, you know, because she's just been so hungry for someone to talk to, someone to treat her with respect.
Yeah. So she invites him to join the book club.
Yes.
And that's the one when they're reading The Bridges of Madison County.
Yes.
Yeah. And so he's like kind of an outsider, but he's like listening to them talk about it. I don't know where I'm going with any of this right now. I'm sorry.
So initially, like, and the book it does take its time, but
Mm-hmm.
then you start to get some red flags. Like the mother-in-law seems to recognize him.
Mm-hmm.
She seems to know who he is, and then on top of that, you find out there is a poor neighborhood that's largely, you know, people of color,
Mm-hmm.
and something horrible has been happening to the children there, but nobody in
Mm-hmm.
this fancy neighborhood cares.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate. And that's a big theme in this book. I've also seen people say that this book is racist. Unfortunately, these are realities.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like, you know, there was that controversy where a teenage girl of color went missing, but then a month later when the white girl went missing, that made national headlines.
Yeah.
And that happens in this book.
Yes.
A lot of young children who are of color
Yeah.
are missing.
Yeah.
And that neighborhood gets really, really, like, they're looking out for each other. Like, if you
Mhm.
go there, these teenage boys will like approach you all aggressively
And they're
because
like-
somebody is hurting the kids there and taking them away.
And they're like little kids.
Little kids, like 9 years old.
Yeah, 6 like babies. And so yeah, there's a lot of commentary, there's a lot of opinions about it being sexist and racist, especially on Goodreads, but I think it's the point.
But it's not until it starts to affect this neighborhood
Mhm.
when the aunt dies and then other things start to happen. That's when people start to notice.
Yeah.
That's when it starts to getting discussed.
Mhm.
But then on top of that, you have another layer. The housewives are like, something is going on.
Mhm.
Something bad is happening. Because, you know, at first, yes, they might just be like, have a lot of time. I mean, they do have a lot of time.
Yeah,
Actually,
and they're reading these terrifying books.
so yeah, they're like, hey, this James Harris guy
Mhm.
has no ID, lots of red flags here. And then the men basically are like, stop reading true crime.
Yeah.
It's affecting your imagination. Like, they don't even listen. They
No.
don't even think, hey, this is a person I, you know,
Mhm.
love and care about and I vowed to be with.
Yep.
They deserve at least 5 minutes of my respect to at least hear them out.
Yeah.
They don't even entertain what these women have to say.
Nope, they don't. And so it kind of kicks off with
I should also mention this book, like we mentioned it earlier, but it's set in the early 90s and in the South.
Yeah.
So this may not even be like your memory of the 90s.
Yes.
You know, this is Grady Hendrix speaking from his memory of the
Mhm.
90s.
Yes.
You know, another thing people criticized is a lot of the people who have, like, you know, positions where they're serving people drinks at parties and stuff tend to be people of color. But
Yeah.
this is his memory of how it was in the 90s.
Well, and it really helps drive, I think, the deeper line of the story about like where monsters lurk and how people pay attention to what's going on.
and how these monsters can get away with doing
Mhm.
horrible things. Unfortunately, the monster is able to recognize this hard reality
Yeah.
of this place that no one's going to do anything about them, even taking children from this neighborhood, because these are poor people. These are people who are not going to catch the attention of the white upper class.
Yes.
And they also know that it doesn't even matter if the housewives see you, because they will not believe these women.
Yeah, they
will not believe these. They're good enough to raise your children and take care of your mom, but they are not good enough to listen to when something bad happens.
And so the first bad thing that happens is Mrs. Green, so she's from this neighborhood, this minority neighborhood. It's called 6 Mile. She's taking care of the mother-in-law, and these marsh rats come into the house and attack them. Like, they become overrun. They like eat their fingers off. It's like really, really upsetting. And Mrs. Green locks herself in the bathroom. The mother-in-law gets pretty badly mauled. She goes to the hospital. She ends up dying. But it's like hundreds of rats. And so Patricia is like, what is happening?
Yeah, so definitely they know something's going on, and they start to basically suspect that James Harris is a vampire. I saw that Brandon mentioned Jerry Dandridge, and absolutely, you're going to see, if you look at this on Goodreads or on the back of the book, they are like, it's Steel Magnolias meets Dracula, or it's Fried Green Tomatoes meets Dracula. I would say no. I think it's Fright Night. It's very much Fright Night, where, you know, our kid, Charlie Brewster, thinks the next door neighbor is a vampire who's killing people, and no one's going to listen to him because he watches too many horror movies. It's exactly Fright Night with housewives. So maybe Steel Magnolias meets Fright Night.
Yeah.
You know, it's about this tight group of friends, how they have to be there for each other when these things happen. So
so Mrs. Green, she's pretty badly injured. The mother-in-law dies. So as they're like recovering, dealing with this loss, Patricia decides that she needs to go out to 6 Mile and say something to Mrs. Green, like talk to her, because she was there when her mother-in-law died. She tried to protect her. So she takes Kitty with her. Was it Kitty that she took with her out there? Yeah. To talk to her, and kind of like figure out more about what's going on too, because she's heard about these kids that are disappearing. And so she goes out there, and her neighbor's daughter ends up missing. Am I doing
how much are we going to tell them?
I don't know.
I don't want to give them too many spoilers.
No? Okay. Well, then, I don't know.
We'll have a spoilery section where you can get into some of that stuff.
Yeah.
I think a good place to start is, how scary do you think this book is?
So terrifying.
I think this is by far Grady Hendrix's scariest book.
I think this is the scariest book that we have read.
It's also the darkest book we've read. I was not ready for this.
I was not either. I actually, at around 60%, I almost was going to message you and be like, I don't know if I can read this book.
I didn't know if I could. And see, that's the thing. Like, if you follow me on Goodreads, I read some messed up shit, guys. I read a book called Cooter about a rat that lived in a woman's vagina. I read Playground that had kids in, like, saw traps. I read American Psycho. I read some dark stuff, but here's the thing. American Psycho didn't try to tell me it was going to be a comedy, even though it was kind of funny.
Yeah.
A lot of those kind of books, I know getting into it, I'm getting extreme horror. This is a very scary book, and it's honestly not funny. And I feel like I would have been better prepared if they had called it something different. I understand Grady Hendrix that's like the way he's marketed. He's marketed as a comedy horror author. This is not a funny book. They were completely wrong in titling it The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires, because that makes you think it's going to be light.
Yeah.
It is not light. This is really heavy stuff.
It gets really dark. It's really scary, but it's also really upsetting. There's a lot of violence. Yeah, it's really gross in some places. It's a well-written story. It is beautifully written. I feel like it's important. I feel like the themes in it are really important if you're reading it for what it is. I think it talks a lot about like small town racism. It talks about small town sexism. It even deals with a bit of that, you know, a lot of people think this was over by the 90s, but it wasn't. You know, Patricia's husband is a psychologist, and if he wants to, he can put her on medication. He can get her committed. And nobody is arguing.
it's just how limited the rights are of the people who are
surrounded by these
in
men
this
in
neighborhood.
power.
Yeah, how the men in power have all the power in this
And
small town.
they get seduced by even more power, and
here's the thing too. So I want to talk a little bit about that. So you're like, okay, well, why are the men like this? Are they just caricatures? Why aren't they listening? Because you know we have a lot of wonderful men who watch this show, and the book is not man hating.
no.
What it does is we do have a couple characters who are like listening to their wives and stuff. But the trouble is all the men kind of like work together in different ways, and their businesses are all relying on each other. So it's like they're really reluctant to burn bridges with this guy over here, even though his wife is saying this, because that guy, if I break my relationship with him, I may not be able to, I might have to sell my house.
Yeah.
So some of these men are like, Ed is a good man. Horse is a good man, but they have a family to look after. And they're just like, as much as I want to believe you, we don't have enough.
There's too much to lose.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there's that part of it. The other part of it is James Harris very quickly becomes somebody who is able to offer these men things. He has a lot of money and he's investing it all in this brand new
like a housing development.
And all of these men are going to get very, very rich.
Yeah. They're essentially gentrifying the neighborhood, 6 Mile. And they're investing all their money in it, and it's going to be really great for all of them and their families. And James Harris is the driving force behind it. And he's charming, and he gets along with all of them and their kids, but something's not right.
And these families, every single one of them, even the ones who are more well off, were facing financial difficulties. So there's another side of that too. On the other hand of this being a very odd power dynamic between husband and wife, the husbands have a lot more on their shoulders. It is their responsibility to provide for their households. Yes. And as much as they may want to believe, if they burn this bridge with James Harris, they will lose everything. Yeah. And some of these people are living in houses that were passed down through generations that mean a lot to them, and they don't want to lose their homes. And so, a lot of people are in really uncomfortable positions here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's talk about the thing.
Which thing?
So,
you want to talk about like the trigger warnings?
Okay. So, vampires, I think we all understand that vampires are essentially sexual. The very bare metaphor of the vampire is, just like how people will equate the weapons in a slasher to, phallic images. Yeah. The fangs of the vampire are phallic.
Yes.
And the penetrating of the neck, that is it's a metaphor for sex. Yes. But I can deal with that. I can deal with that. Like, I remember some people when Interview with the Vampire came out, they're like, it's too sexy. And
no,
I'm
like,
it's just sexy enough.
Perfect level of sexy for vampires.
Like, I kind of like a little bit of sexiness. Yes. I've even read vampire things with children. This one, I almost couldn't deal with it because the trigger warnings are going to be there's extreme sexual violence in this, and there's sexual violence against children. Not prepared. Thought this was going to be a funny book. It is not funny. No. It is really scary, and I think it is well written. It has a lot of things to say, but you're going to enjoy it more. I don't want to even say enjoy it. You're going to get more out of it if you know what you're reading before you get into it. Like, you don't pick up American Psycho because you want a casual Sunday read. No. You know that you're going to read something that challenges you. This book is intended to challenge you.
Yes, it is. And it's good. Like, now in hindsight, I'm really glad I stuck through it, because I do feel like everything that it has to say is really important, but it's hard, especially if you don't know what you're getting into. It's very upsetting. I've never been so like emotionally distraught. I couldn't read it right before bed a lot of the time. Like I said, like, The Stranger Beside Me gave me nightmares, and this is very like that. Like, you don't know who you're letting into your inner circle. Like, you don't know who around you could be that monster kind of a thing.
It is. I think that's a really good parallel to how this book is almost fictionalized true crime. When you read those true crime books, you get really scared and upset because this could happen to you. Now, obviously, a vampire can't happen to you, but the vampire in this is a metaphor for that person who is a sexual predator. Yes. Who is somebody who could, molest your children and stuff. And unfortunately, when these things happen in real life, a lot of times people don't know about it. People are shamed.
Mhm.
People are not believed. People are afraid to speak out,
Yeah.
especially in small communities, and how some people get away with that. Get away with being monsters in suburbia.
Especially when that person holds power. Like in this book, how James Harris has so much money and he is holding all these people's careers essentially, and how, like, I mean, Ted Bundy didn't really have a lot of power, but he was white and he was charming and he was handsome. So I think that's the danger there.
It's really so. I try not to give you guys too many spoilers, but because I know some of you just won't, and that's fine. You should know what your limits are. You know, I have my limits too.
Yeah.
I actually don't like a lot of true crime stuff or things based on true crime because I know it's
I don't
real,
either.
that crosses my line. I can read any amount of fictional horror,
Yeah.
but something like Girl Next Door is just a little too much for me.
Yeah. I need like a level of disassociation for my horror.
It's okay to recognize what your boundaries are. And if your boundaries are sexual violence or sexual violence against children, and this is a nope for you, that is 100% okay. But I'm going to tell you what they are,
Yes.
which is, you know, something I don't normally do just because I want you to know. So how this vampire feeds on people, and it's part of how they want to get away with it, is they use the femoral artery, which is the artery you have on your inner thigh. So that is how the vampire feeds them. And the vampire will also completely strip down its victim. So you have a victim who in some cases is a 9-year-old child. This victim is found in the back of a car with a grown man on top of her feeding from her thigh. Yeah. That's where I was just like, holy shit, what am I reading?
Yeah. It was shocking and like just it wasn't expected. There was no warning going into this book. And I mean, like, we read How to Sell a Haunted House last year, and that was my first Grady Hendrix experience. That book didn't scare me. There was a child who was in danger, but it was very, very different. I was absolutely not prepared for this. And it was a little bit after that part where I was like, I don't know how much of this I can do.
It's really hard to read. Yeah. The other thing, and I'm going to tell you guys this now, it's kind of a pivotal moment in the book, but it was a lot for me. I've never read this in a vampire novel before, and I've read a lot of vampire novels. I can't say that word on YouTube, but extreme sexual assault that rhymes with grape, that happens in this. I have never, ever heard of a vampire doing that.
Yeah.
Ever.
And it really had nothing to do...
I've heard of the vampire seducing people, or even putting them under like a hypnosis.
But this was not that.
No, this vampire violently in a woman's own home assaulted her.
Yeah. So it gets really heavy. It gets really dark. And somebody said something earlier about vampirism. Danny, Horror Addict, said something about vampirism being an STD, and they do talk about that. In this book, they do draw those parallels, and it's
it is honestly first I want to say thank you to my brother Zigma, who just had a birthday, by the way, and thank you for the donation. I really appreciate that.
Yes.
Yeah, actually very much it is. And once the initial shock wore off, I was like, okay, this is an interesting way to look at vampirism, because we have a lot, our horror market is oversaturated with vampire novels. It takes a lot to make us think about vampires in a different way. And this book, essentially, so this woman is sexually assaulted, and because that's how, so typically in most vampire books, they suck from you, you suck from them. It's a whole sucking thing, to quote Buffy. And that's how vampires are made.
Yes.
That is not how vampires are made in this. No. It's sexual assault. They have to release other kinds of fluids. So this is gross.
Farpoint Station asked if it actually advanced the story, or if it was used for shock value. It's part of the story. It's important for the story. I really think it is. And that's why it's worth reading if you know what to be prepared for, and you can handle it. Obviously, if you can't, just don't.
You might not be. That's why we're telling you.
But I do think it was an important part of the story.
I think the reason why it works is I read a lot of vampire, especially after Interview with the Vampire, Lost Boys, vampires started to have a little less bite because they became sex symbols.
Yes.
Then we get like Twilight and stuff where it's not even horror anymore, it's paranormal romance.
Time Capsule says they like their vampires sparkly. Yeah.
This one really brings vampires back into a place where they're truly terrifying. And the way that vampirism is spread like an STD in this, it's almost like how this kind of horror, this kind of abuse is spread under the surface in small towns.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you hear a lot of times where really awful cases of abuse happen, and you're like, how did nobody know? In my own small town, we've had really horrible cases like this
Mm-hmm.
that affected a lot of people, and you're just like, how did nobody know?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, a lot of times people are like, oh, but I don't want to say anything because I don't have enough evidence. I think there might be something wrong. You know, it's hard.
Or like in this story, they have too much to lose.
They have too much to
and
lose.
they're afraid to lose it. Or they the person doing the abusing still has control over those other people and can just keep putting them in positions where they can't say anything.
I also think there's something about sexual violence that I feel, especially because it's something that's harder for people to talk about because it's a different kind of violation than even, you know, like other kinds of physical assault. Just people, especially, you know, this is 1993. You know, it's especially hard to talk about. You're afraid of not being believed. You're afraid of being blamed. People, you know, especially victim blaming in the 90s. Oh, that was a thing. You know, it's still a thing. It was worse in the 90s.
Yeah.
And it kind of is, you know, because afterwards the person who was assaulted, they start to slowly wither away. And I think that's kind of a metaphor for what sexual violence can do to some women, you know, and men too who are sexually assaulted, how it kind of kills you from the inside and you start to, you know, shut down and you start to distance yourself from people.
And you doubt and you blame.
It eats you up.
Yeah, it can spiral. And so I rated this book 4 stars. I ended up really liking it. I thought it was really well written. I just think it's really important to know what you're getting into when you read it.
I gave it 3 because initially I was pretty upset when I read it. This was not what I thought I was getting into. I thought I was going to read a fun book about friendship and vampires.
Yeah.
That was not what this book was. So I was angry at the marketing.
Yeah.
After I had time to simmer on it, I was like, no, he's saying some really important stuff here. But again, because the marketing, I couldn't initially absorb that because I was so shocked. And that's not the author's fault. It's the marketing's fault. So I removed a star for that just because it wasn't what I signed up for. You know, if you tell me I'm getting a hamburger and you give me, you know, an ice cream sundae, it doesn't mean I don't like ice cream sundaes, but it's not a damn hamburger. So that upset me.
Yes. Yeah. I agree. Yeah. I like I said, I almost quit. I was like, I don't want to finish it, but I'm really, really glad I did.
Outside of the dark themes, there were a couple other things that did bother me in this book. One of the things that bothered me, and I just was just like, what the hell are you doing? The book is getting to a point about 60% in where it's getting to her head and you're like, wow, we're really early for this. You know, and you're like, we're going into final battle territory. We've all read stories. We all know that when it starts to build up to this big battle, like we're going to have a big fight, some sort of confrontation, and then the book is going to end. And so I was like, this is way early. The flippin' book does a 3 years later. Yeah. I actually heard it in the SpongeBob book. I was so mad.
Yeah, I was really upset. I was like, excuse me? Like, where's my solution to this problem?
It upsets you because you're all geared up for this battle and it takes the wind out of that conflict. And then it almost resets. And there's a few things that really pissed me off about this. Is 3 years later, the book club's gone. The book club's been taken over, and now it's like it's kind of what it was originally. Only it's men and women, and this tight group of friends don't have their outlet anymore.
They're reading. I don't remember what they're reading at first, but then the next book that they pick up is Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, and I just like. I couldn't roll my eyes any harder.
They're reading Clear and Present Danger.
Yes.
Because the men are all picking the books, which these are great books too, but this was their book club. They wanted to read their trash.
Yep.
Let the women have their trash.
They want to read Helter Skelter.
Yes.
Like, yeah, I rolled my eyes real hard at that one.
It's kind of like if you had a movie club and you were watching rom-coms and then you invite a guy who's like, guess what? We're going to watch all the Bourne Identity movies. You're just like, you don't get what this is.
Right? I love Bourne Identity, but that's not what we're doing
that's
here.
Not what we're doing here. That's
exactly.
not it.
Yeah.
So it takes, then you feel like you have to start all over. And so it really killed the pacing. Like I had a hard time kind of getting back into it. I'm like, well, where the flip is this going? And then you end up getting a final conflict. I honestly think you could have taken out that whole part there, that whole 3 years later, the whole reset up, and moved into the final battle. And I think that extra pages, because I know the author did an AMA on Reddit where he talked about how he had to cut a lot of things for length. One of the weird things is her son Blue is obsessed with Nazis, and you're like, is this going to mean anything later on?
It means nothing.
Originally, there was a payoff for that. He had to cut it out. Originally, there was more of like some of the nicer things, like with husbands like Horace. Horace is a nice guy, and Ed, and you got to see more of the other relationships. He had to cut it out. Honestly, I want that back.
I do too. Yeah, maybe
Get rid
can
of
we
the
get
3
like
years
an editor's cut?
Yeah, where's the editor's cut?
But the 3 years later part, though, I will say was really like my driving force for hating Patricia's husband as much as I did. Like everything that man was doing, I was like, I just wanted to strangle him.
And let's talk about that. So that's another theme in this book. This book is, and what's cool is sometimes I feel like a book will tackle a lot of really big things, but these things all go together because they are all symptoms of, they're all offshoots of the same problem. And so, yeah, Patricia's husband's a freaking gaslighter. He sucks.
The worst.
So there's one husband in this, Grace's husband, who is physically abusive. And of course we hate him.
Yeah, we hate him.
But somebody who's mentally abusive and makes someone question their own sanity, like that's a different kind of monster. And I feel like Carter, her husband, gets away with it because he's not laying a hand on her, but he has like almost brainwashed her. He institutionalizes her, and then he brings his children there to see their mother strapped to a bed.
Yeah.
And then the kids are crying and angry. Like, how do you do that to somebody you love?
Because he's a psychiatrist, and he definitely like plays these mind games and uses that position that he's in to be the boss and to just I hate him so much. I hate him
and he's
so
also having
much.
an affair, like multiple affairs.
Yes.
He is the absolute worst.
Yeah.
He has no respect for her. She just needs to do her job and get in line, or he'll take everything away from her.
Yep. Yeah. And
he turns her children against her. Oh my God.
He's the worst. He's I hated James Harris. I hated Carter almost more.
Carter was the worst.
So
that was
bad.
Slick's husband. He sucked.
Yeah.
Not as bad.
Not as bad.
At least he cared when bad things happened to Slick. And obviously Grace's husband sucks.
Yeah.
Oh, it was a lot, man.
It was a lot.
It was a lot. We went on a journey.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of journey. So I'm gonna compare this.
Oh, sorry, Brandon. Spoiler alert. It's not really a spoiler. It happens pretty quickly.
Carter's a jerk in the beginning.
Yeah.
So
it just doesn't get better. It gets worse. It gets worse.
But no, Carter sucks. This book does have a lot of heart in it. See, here's the thing with Grady Hendrix, and this is one of the reasons why whenever he has anything coming out, I'm just like, just take my money. I don't even care. Man's publishing his grocery list. Sure. I read his book, Paperbacks from Hell, which is a nonfiction book about books from the 70s. I will read anything this man does.
I actually saw that at Barnes & Noble the other day, and I almost bought it for you.
I love Grady Hendrix.
Yeah.
I actually haven't read that yet.
Nice.
But I will read anything he writes, and the reason why is because every single thing he writes, I feel like he puts a piece of his heart in. You know, he really bears his soul. Yeah. And he shows you such a unique, like, point of view, and you really grow to care about his characters like they're friends of yours. Like, you hold them in your heart forever. You know, my favorite by far, if this is too much for you, if we've given you the trigger warning and you're like, yeah, not for me. Yeah. I highly recommend How to Sell a Haunted House, which has been nominated for an Oscar this year.
Yes, indeed.
That book makes you laugh, makes you cry. It's all the feelings. It's one of the best books I've ever read. Yeah,
it was good. There were some parts in that book that were very, very scary. Like the flashback with the brother.
That one scared the crap out of me.
It was pretty scary, but this book was a different kind of scary. I truly think it's the scariest book that we have read.
It is. I agree.
Yeah.
So, but he is great, and there is a lot of heart in this, and I do think it's a book that has a lot of important things to say. I think it's a book that has, for a lot of people, I think this might be a book you need to read because it's going to speak to you. It's going to make you feel heard. For other people, this book is just going to be too damn much.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely heavy. It's a social commentary. It's like a warning. It's a lot. It's truly a lot, but I think it's worth it. I think it's worth it if you can.
And I think even though this is set in the 90s, like I said, it's still very relevant today. You know, just those things that are, like I said, we've had things like this have happened, in my personal life that happened in our town. You know, and then you look back and you're like, oh, you know, maybe I should have said something. Maybe I should have done something. And the reason you didn't is because you didn't know enough. You just had an inkling. And, you know, honestly, I think books like this remind us that even if you just have an inkling that you think something's bad, that sick feeling in the pit of your stomach, that teacher, something's off with that teacher, something's off with that neighbor. I'm not saying we should go like, you know,
I'm not trying to start a witch hunt.
No, don't do that. But, you know, maybe talk to other neighbors and stuff and be like, you know, just get a conversation going about it. And definitely when people say something, your child comes to you and they're like, I don't want to stay after school and work on that project. You know, listen. I don't want to go to that neighbor's house. You know, I don't want to, you know, that you know, someone says, you know, that person hurt me, that person assaulted me, that person makes me scared. We need to listen.
Yeah. Keeping like clear, open lines of communication, especially with children, because they don't know how to communicate those things sometimes. Yeah. And then with your partner, obviously too, but
yeah, absolutely. With your partner.
Yeah. It's a lot for sure. Do you think you're going to change your rating on it?
I think I want to, honestly, if the title was changed and it was marketed with not the whole cute thing in the back, like,
hello, darling,
Steel Magnolia, and the marketing really upsets me.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to put it this way. If it had a different title and it was marketed as, you know, Grady Hendrix is telling a darker story this time, you know, put on your suspenders because this one's going to knock your pants off. I would be like, holy shit, they delivered.
Yeah.
You know, and I would by far give it 4 stars. Like I said, the biggest problem for me is the marketing. And I actually kind of want to reread this one a second time, knowing what I know now. And then maybe I would give it a 4 stars. But I would reread it.
Your rubric for how you rate things is a lot more strict than mine, as it should be. Like, you have a lot of thought that goes into it, like all the marketing and the things surrounding not just the book and the writing itself. So I think your vote is fair. But like I said, I gave it 4 stars. I really, really liked it. It's written so well. I was engrossed in it the whole time. Honestly, even when I was upset, I was still like, well, I have to see this through. I'm here with Patricia. I have to help her figure out how to solve this problem.
Honestly, I'm just going to give it 4 stars. I'm going to give it 4 stars and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
Because for me, typically a 3-star book is something that was enjoyable. Might be a beach read. It didn't really stick with me and it didn't make me think. This book, I will never forget this book.
No.
I will never forget this book. This book really shook me up. And I'm still thinking about this book. So that's definitely worthy of 4 stars. Unfortunately, Goodreads doesn't let you do half stars.
I wish it did.
I probably would go more 3.5. But I'm going to go ahead and give it 4.
Yeah.
But the marketing, you just need to know what you're getting into. So hopefully, and I don't think we really spoiled it because this book is very much character driven, not plot driven. So even if I told you the ending, you need to read it because it's about the characters. It's about their experiences. It's about, you know, their relationships. You know, think about movies like that. If I could tell you everything that happens in, for instance, Fried Green Tomatoes, the joy of watching Fried Green Tomatoes is the relationship.
Yes, 100%. And how those characters interact with each other and the way that they speak to each other and what they go through together. I agree with that 100%. Yeah.
But we also did not tell you guys a lot.
No.
Welcome, Zigma, to the B Movie Coven.
Woo-hoo.
So now, yes, you got special emotes, and as an initiate, you get early access to videos and watch parties. So yeah, welcome.
Party on.
Yeah, I've not noticed that with Storygraph. Storygraph is also like Goodreads. Storygraph is a lot more involved.
Yeah. I kind of like the simplicity of Goodreads.
I like the simplicity of Goodreads. Personally, the other problem with Storygraph is I don't know that many people on there.
Well, and like I've had Goodreads for so long at this point.
It was so hard. They do let you transfer things over, but it doesn't transfer perfectly.
I don't know about that. I probably won't.
I know,
change.
right? Yeah, I like Goodreads.
Yeah, me too.
I wish Goodreads had a pro version that worked for $5 a month. I could get rid of the ads.
Yeah, that would be nice.
That'd be rad.
That would be super rad.
Maybe some more stats and stuff like Letterboxd.
Maybe we can write them a letter.
We should.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Karen Book Club.
A strongly worded letter. I'm just kidding.
Okay, so now I think we've wrapped up that book pretty well.
I think so too.
Let's talk about next month's book.
Our next book is called The Bad Ones. Is that right?
The bad ones.
The bad ones. I'll read the back of it. I gotta find it though.
Boom.
The bad.
And I mentioned this a little bit in the cocktail stream we did before this one, but Danny, Nightmare, and I are in the process of moving. As you can see, a lot of things are gone. After the Oscars, I'm packing up everything because we are moving on the 19th into a new house, which is really nice. And I'm going to set it up and it's going to be rad and there's going to be a lot more content. But since January, when we got the notice that they were selling our house, we've been looking for places. So that's why I haven't done a lot. And so this next month, I'm probably going to be AWOL a bit while we're getting set up.
Yeah. But then after that, watch out.
And in April, of course, you're still going to get your book club stream the very first Thursday of the month.
Yep. So I'm going to read the synopsis on Goodreads for this book. Goddess, count to 5 in the morning, who's alive? In the course of a single winter's night, 4 people vanish without a trace across a small town. Nora's estranged best friend, Becca, is one of the lost. As Nora tries to untangle the truth of Becca's disappearance, she discovers a darkness in her town's past, as well as a string of coded messages Becca left for her to unravel. These clues lead Nora to a piece of local folklore, a legendary goddess of forgotten origins who played a role in Nora and Becca's own childhood games. An arresting crossover horror fantasy threaded with dark magic, The Bad Ones is a poison pen love letter to semi-toxic best friendship, the occult power of childhood play and artistic creation, and the razor-thin line between make-believe and belief.
You can get this book if you go on Goodreads, do a Buddy Book Club. We have it set up there. You can get it from Barnes & Noble, Amazon, all of the places.
Yeah.
And
it's pretty new. It was just released at the end of February.
it's a new release.
I was unable to get it through the library, but maybe that's my library. I think you should still try. But.
And obviously, if it's just an issue, if you can't find the book, whatever, post in Bloody Book Club. We can hook you up with a link or lend you our copy or whatever. Just let us know. We'll make sure that you're able to find the book.
Yes.
And yes, Spooky Robin, I'm still in the same town. I'm actually just moving up the road. Like
Pretty cool.
further out into the mountains.
Ooh, spooky.
So, Bad Ones next month. And don't forget that you're going to see us presenting Best Horror Book of 2023.
At the Scares.
That's this Sunday at 6 p.m. over on Horror Addicts. It's going to be a lot of fun. And then next month we got Bloody Book Club. We're going to do the Bad Ones. And we'll also be doing a movie watch party of Jennifer's Body, which is so rad. And she hasn't seen it.
I haven't seen it. I'm excited for this one. I'm mostly excited for the soundtrack.
It's so good.
Yeah.
It's
No,
just
I'm
so
here for
everything. I love it so much. It's so good.
Yeah.
Also, that gives me, she brought up a good question earlier, so I'm going to ask you guys, and please leave it in the comments below. We discussed how we watched Heathers, which is obviously the Heathers of the 80s.
Yeah.
Then Jawbreaker is the Heathers of the 90s.
Which I also haven't seen.
Mean Girls is the Heathers of the early 2000s. What is the Heathers of the 2010s or 2020s? Let us know in those comments below.
And it can't, I mean, for the 2020s, it can't be Mean Girls, the new Mean Girls.
It can't. You can't cheat.
And we have time for that one, but I want to know what it is for the 2010s.
Yeah. Which one can I revamp it for a new generation? And, I think that's everything. So, until we meet again.
Blessed be.